Good evening, friends. My name is Ardra Balachandran, and I am the host for this inaugural session of Kerala Looks Ahead. On behalf of the Government of Kerala and the State Planning Board, I am delighted to welcome all of you who have joined this online conference. As we had written to you, Kerala Looks Ahead is an international conference and consultation that will serve as a platform for the Government of Kerala to learn from experiences and best practices across the world in its efforts to modernize the economy and bring the benefits of high growth and inclusive development to all the people of Kerala. We look forward to a fruitful conference with all of you. To get kick-started with today's program, I now invite Professor V.K. Ramachandran, Vice Chairperson, Kerala State Planning Board, to make the welcome address. Welcome, Professor Ramachandran.
Thank you. Thank you, Ardra. Chief Minister of Kerala, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, Professor Stiglitz, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, speakers in all sessions, members of the Cabinet, members of Parliament and the Kerala Legislative Assembly, scientists, technologists, students, as we all are, teachers, social workers, administrators, political activists, media persons, partner institutions, my colleagues in the Planning Board, and many others. We are honored by your presence today. Welcome to Kerala Looks Ahead. As you know, Kerala's accomplishment shows that the well-being of the people can be improved and social, political, and cultural conditions transformed when there is appropriate public action. In Kerala, the action of mass organizations and of mass movements and the policy actions of governments have been the most important constituents of this public action. When the present government of Kerala came to office in 2016, it decided against the trend at the central government level, and in other states of India, to continue the process of economic planning. The government decided that while it would continue to deepen and extend its achievements in what is called human development, it would use these achievements as a foundation on which to create new employment opportunities for the people, particularly youth, to increase incomes from production in agriculture, industry, and income-bearing services, and to build infrastructure. The last 4 years and a half have been turbulent, truly tumultuous. There were extreme weather events, Cyclone Okhi in 2017, and extreme rainfall events followed by floods and mudslides in 2018 and 2019. The floods of 2018 were the worst in a century. There was an outbreak of Nipah virus disease in 2 districts of the state in 2018. There were new stresses on the state economy caused by demonetization in 2016 and the introduction of the goods and services tax in 2017. And in Kerala, as elsewhere, the crisis associated with COVID-19 and the pandemic has unsettled the economy as never before. Nevertheless, we are happy to say that these have been years of achievement as well. We have achieved, I think, the most sweeping changes in decades in public schooling in the last 4 years. There have been great changes in health facilities with regard to public access and quality. There has been a transformation in major physical infrastructure, a new policy direction in industry and information technology, a deepening of participatory local government, a renewed sort of emphasis, particularly after the floods, on livelihoods and job creation. And once again, we have strengthened our policies on social protection and gender empowerment. Today, we believe that Kerala is poised for a major transformation. And in this state, as many people know, many people who have followed the state know, every transformation, every new policy is a matter of public debate, of widespread public consultation. And this conference is a part of that process. The Chief Minister, who is also the chairperson of the State Planning Board, was keen that we organize a conference not to teach and certainly not to preach, but to learn. And to learn from the world on subjects that we believe to be of great importance to our future. Thus, we have the sessions of this conference include sessions on modernizing agriculture, fisheries and animal resources, on modern industrial possibilities, on information technology, modern skill development, on higher education including international academic collaboration, on tourism and e-governance. We also have 3 special sessions, one on local governments, one on federal finance in the Indian context, and a special session that will be addressed by the leaders of industry in the country. We want, in brief, to be ambitious in our vision. Hence, this unique consultation with some of the best experts and minds in the world. This session indeed sets the tone for the conference. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, our first special guest, is a world-famous pediatric thoracic specialist. She was the former Director General, she is the former Director General of the Indian Council for Medical Research, and she is now Chief Scientist at the World Health Organization. Professor Joseph Stiglitz is the winner of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, and he is one of the 2 most famous development economists in the world. The other one will join our concluding session. We have been humbled by the response to our invitations to participate in our effort. As you will see from our program, more than 190 participants from more than 11 countries and many important multilateral and national organizations are part of our 3-day conference. And those who join us in the Zoom room, on YouTube, on our Facebook page, on our website, come from many more countries. I look forward to 3 days of discussion. Thank you and welcome once again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for setting the context of this event and also warmly welcoming our participants and guests. I now invite Dr. Vishwas Mehta, IAS, Chief Secretary, Government of Kerala, to address the gathering.
Good evening and warm welcome to the Honorable Chief Minister, Honorable Ministers, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Professor V.K. Ramachandran, and distinguished dignitaries. It's indeed an honor to be part of this prestigious event, Kerala Looks Ahead, organized by the Kerala State Planning Board. Kerala is considered a role model in universal health, literacy, human development, index, gender empowerment, and inclusive growth. The state has consistently been ranked number 1 in the country for best governance and in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal by the UN. Through this international conference, we would like to explore new frontiers in growth and development in a post-COVID world, as explained by Professor Ramachandran already. Extreme resilience of people of Kerala to withstand natural disasters and pandemic has been noticed all over the world. Today, through this conference, we wish to explore our future road in key areas of agriculture, animal resources, fisheries, e-governance, higher education, industry, information technology, skill development, and tourism. We are indeed glad that esteemed dignitaries like Professor Joseph Stiglitz from Columbia University and a Nobel laureate in economics, and Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chief Scientist of WHO, are keynote speakers in today's session. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan is among the country's top scientists and a public health expert who has been at the forefront of our global community's response to the COVID-19. Professor Joseph Stiglitz, in his phenomenal work, Making Globalization Work, has mentioned that development is about transforming the lives of people, not just transforming economies. This is what perhaps Kerala's model is all about, and we are proud to be part of this legacy. We are looking forward to listen to all the great ideas today, and a warm welcome and happy deliberations in the sessions that are going to come ahead. My hearty congratulations to Kerala State Planning Board for organizing a very, very interactive and big conference with all the eminent dignitaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I now request Sri Ramachandran Kadanapalli, Minister for Ports, Museums, Archaeology and Archives, Government of Kerala, to speak.
Respected Chief Minister, Ministers, esteemed speakers, distinguished personalities and colleagues, Dr. Swaminathan, Professor Joseph E. Seth, Professor V.K. Ramachandran, Chief Secretary Dr. Vishal Mehta, Dr. Venu, Member Secretary. It's a pleasure to attend the inaugural meeting of the three-day international conference and consultation titled Kerala Look Ahead. Kerala is well known across the world for advances in the sphere of land, reforms, health, education, secularism, social justice, gender, and social protection. Kerala is also appreciated by the world for achievements in human development. This government, led by Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, which assumed office in 2016, has stood by its commitment to development and welfare of the people. The time has come to build on this foundation for growth of productive forces and infrastructure in the state. The government now plans to rebuild the state and build a new Kerala, a new phase of economic and educated, skilled, and political conscious workforces. The idea behind this effort, put forth by the Chief Minister of Kerala, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, to seek the views of experts, has resulted in this conference. We have to acquire sources, chances for revitalization. I am sure this international conference discussing the various features of selected zones such as agriculture, fisheries, e-governance, higher education, industry, information technology, tourism, skill development are well being earnest step to achieve this goal. Our government, under the charismatic leadership of Chief Minister Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, has sincerely addressing all the matters connected with the development of our state. Sir, I don't want to take more time. I extend my sincere wishes for the grand success in this great endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your words of support. I now invite Sri A.K. Shashindran, Minister for Transport, Government of Kerala, to speak to the gathering.
Respected Chief Minister Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, other ministers and dignitaries attending this function. The Government of Kerala is organizing an international conference named Kerala Looks Ahead in order to consult international experts in few sectors which are identified as important for Kerala's economic future. Major themes are higher education, including international academic collaboration, modern industrial possibilities, modern skill development, modernizing agriculture, fisheries and animal resources development, tourism, information technology, e-governance. Special sections are local governments and federalism and development financing. Kerala's present economic policy has two important aspects. First, to build on Kerala's historic achievements with respect to health, education, and secondly, to make sure that economics grew through production and application of modern science and technology, particularly in agriculture, industry, information technology, transport, other large-scale infrastructure facilities, and other productive areas. In this transport sector, major achievements are arrangement of technology has been one of the turning points in the transport sector in mainly two ways. In terms of serving the travelers and the real-time information from the electronic ticketing machines and are analyzed at the electronic data processing centers for the state-run buses. This conference will be helpful for formulate strategy for the state and valuable inputs of the experts will help Kerala for the further development. I wish the conference a big success.
Thank you for those words, sir. It's my pleasure to invite next Honourable Minister for Water Resources, Government of Kerala, Shri K. Krishnan Kutty, to address the gathering. Sir, may I request you to unmute your microphone? We are not able to hear your voice.
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഹലോ.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
ഞാൻ മലയാളത്തിലാണ് സംസാരിക്കാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. ബഹുമാന്യ മുഖ്യമന്ത്രി, മറ്റു ബഹുമാന്യരെ, ഈ സെമിനാറിൽ ഒരു പ്രധാന വിഷയമായി കൃഷിയും അതിന്റെ ആധുനികവൽക്കരണവും ഉൾപ്പെടുത്തിയാൽ ഞാൻ സന്തോഷിക്കുന്നു. കർഷകരിന്ന് പ്രതിസന്ധി നേരിടുന്ന കാലഘട്ടത്തിലൂടെയാണ് നാം കടന്നു പോകുന്നത്. കഴിഞ്ഞ 40 വർഷത്തിനിടെ കർഷകർക്ക് മാത്രമാണ് കാര്യമായ വരുമാന വർധനയില്ലാത്തത്. UN പഠന റിപ്പോർട്ടുകൾ തന്നെ ചൂണ്ടിക്കാണിക്കുന്നു. കാർഷിക രംഗത്ത് പ്രധാനമായും 2 കാര്യങ്ങൾക്കാണ് ഊന്നൽ നൽകേണ്ടത്. ഉൽപാദന ചെലവ് നിയന്ത്രിച്ച് ഉൽപാദനവും കൂട്ടുകയും ഉൽപ്പന്നങ്ങൾക്ക് അർഹമായ വില ലഭിക്കുകയും വേണം എന്നതാണ്. ഇവിടെ കൃഷിക്കാർ ഒരു കൃഷി ചെയ്ത് അവന് ജീവിക്കാൻ മതിയായ വേതനം കിട്ടുന്നത് അവന്റെ ആവശ്യമാണ്. അതിന് മറ്റു രാജ്യങ്ങൾ, US ഒരു കൃഷിക്കാരൻ $62,000 ആവറേജ് ഒരു കൊല്ലം കിട്ടുന്നത്. അതൊന്നും കിട്ടിയില്ലെങ്കിലും ജീവിക്കാൻ മതിയായ ഒരു വേതനം ഇവിടെ കിട്ടണം. അതിന് കൃഷിക്കാരനെ ഒരു സേവകനായിട്ട് അംഗീകരിക്കണം എന്നാണ് എനിക്ക് അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കുന്നത്. 140 കോടി ജനത്തിനെ നമ്മൾ തീറ്റിപ്പോറ്റുന്ന കൃഷിക്കാരനെ സേവകനായിട്ട് അംഗീകരിക്കുന്നില്ല. MLA ആയാൽ അംഗീകരിക്കുന്നു, മറ്റൊരു ജോലിക്കാരനായാൽ അംഗീകരിക്കുന്നു. അവർക്ക് സേവകൻ എന്നുള്ള നിലയ്ക്ക് എല്ലാ ആനുകൂല്യങ്ങളും കിട്ടുന്നു. അത് സേവകനായിട്ട് അംഗീകരിക്കണം എന്നാണ് എനിക്കതിൽ പറയാനുള്ളത്. അതിൽ ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട പ്രശ്നം അതിന് എവിടെ നിന്ന് പണം എത്തും എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതിന് മൂല്യവർദ്ധിത ഉൽപ്പന്നങ്ങളുടെ ലാഭത്തിലെ ഒരു വിഹിതം നീക്കി വെച്ചാൽ ഇതിനുള്ള പണം കിട്ടാനും ആ പണം ഉപയോഗിച്ച് ഒരു കാർഷിക ബഡ്ജറ്റ് തന്നെ തയ്യാറാക്കാനും നമുക്ക് സാധിക്കും. ഞാൻ ചെറിയൊരു ഉദാഹരണം പറഞ്ഞ് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാം. ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ അരി വിൽക്കുന്നു. അരി ഇവിടെ 40 ടൺ അരിയാണ് ഒരു വർഷം വിൽക്കുന്നത്. ആ 40 ടൺ അരി വിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ 40 ഉറുപ്പിക്ക് വിറ്റാൽ കൃഷിക്കാരന് കിട്ടുന്നത് 22 രൂപ. അപ്പൊ ആ ലാഭത്തിലെ ഒരു വിഹിതം മാറ്റിവെച്ചാൽ, 1% മാറ്റിവെച്ചാൽ 400 കോടി കിട്ടും. 400 കോടി കിട്ടിയാൽ അതിൽ 1 ഏക്കർ കൃഷി ചെയ്യാൻ 15,000 റുപ്യ ബോണസ് ആയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കുക. അതിൽ പണിയെടുക്കുന്ന 3 തൊഴിലാളിക്കും 2,500 റുപ്യ കൊടുക്കാൻ 50 കോടി റുപ്യ വേണം. ബാക്കി 350 കോടി മറ്റ് രാഷ്ട്രസേവകന്മാർക്ക് കൊടുക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ ആനുകൂല്യങ്ങളും, ബോണസ്, ചികിത്സാ ചെലവ്, എല്ലാം അതും കൊടുക്കാൻ വേറെ ആരുടെയും പൈസ വേണ്ട. അതേപോലെ വലിയ വലിയ ഉൽപ്പന്നങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന മറ്റേ ലേസ്, ഉരുളക്കിഴങ്ങിൽ, പാലിൽ പോലും ഐസ്ക്രീം ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന ലാഭം, ഇതൊക്കെ ആ ലാഭത്തിൽ ഒരു വിഹിതം കർഷകൻ അവകാശപ്പെട്ടതാണ് എന്നുള്ള ഒരു നയം നമുക്ക് രൂപീകരിക്കാൻ മാത്രമേ നമുക്ക് കൃഷിയെ രക്ഷപ്പെടുത്താൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഉൽപാദന വർധനവ്. പ്രിസിഷൻ കേരളത്തിൽ തന്നെ 22 ലക്ഷം കൃഷിയുണ്ട്. അതിൽ 3 ലക്ഷം 4 ലക്ഷം കൃഷി മാത്രമേ ഇറിഗേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നുള്ളൂ. ബാക്കി ഒന്നും ഇറിഗേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല. അപ്പൊ നാണ്യവിളകൾ കൂടി ഇറിഗേറ്റ് ചെയ്താൽ ഇന്നത്തെ വിളവിന്റെ 6 ഇരട്ടിയോ 7 ഇരട്ടിയോ നമുക്ക് പറഞ്ഞിരിക്കാൻ സാധിക്കും. അത് മറ്റേ വിദേശ നാണ്യം കിട്ടാനും കൂടി സൗകര്യം ഉണ്ടാക്കണം. ആ രീതിക്ക് ചിന്തിക്കണം എന്ന് മാത്രമാണ് എനിക്ക് അവസരത്തിൽ അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കാനുള്ളത്. ഈ സെമിനാറിൽ പങ്കെടുക്കാൻ അവസരം തന്നതിൽ പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തിക്കൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ അവസരം.
Thank you, sir, for touching upon a very pertinent issue faced by our farmers. I now request Shri E. Chandrasekharan, Minister for Revenue and Housing, Government of Kerala, to address the gathering.
Dear friends, delegates and dignitaries, land has ever been the greatest promise of or gift to humankind. Right from the age of cost by Abraham and his offspring for the promised land, up to the recent farmers uprising in Delhi to protect their rights of farms. Politics of land has always been pivotal in all domains of human development, anywhere on this planet. It is an acclaimed fact that Kerala is an important example in independence India of development policies, which has placed human welfare at its center. The strength of this development pattern lies in the revolutionary land reforms measures boldly initiated by the Communist Party-led government of Kerala, which came to power following the first general election of the state in 1957. Prior to 1957, only a few thousands of families in the state were owners of land. As a result of the land reforms legislation, which was accomplished over a long period from 1957 to 1970, now more than 80 lakh families in Kerala have absolute ownership in the land they live and cultivate. The people of Kerala, who were socially and economically empowered through this act, grew confident to seek and reach advanced and emerging provinces of learning and culture of all parts of the world. They brought home not only bank remittances, but a huge reserve of contemporary and futuristic knowledge as well. Centuries before globalization acquired the current corporate composed political definition, people and governments of Kerala had trade and cultural relation with the people of the Mediterranean in the west and China in the east. International cooperation is nothing new to Kerala, as our historical relations with civilization in far places on earth still continue to thrive. Our commitment to development policies based in equitable distribution of resources also has been growing. Hence, to keep our promises to the people of Kerala, land which is one of the most fundamental requirement for the industrial and economic development, is being rigidly conserved by the state government and its revenue department as a judicious investment of resources, and is being appropriately allotted to sustainable development projects which build up productivity, employment, and welfare of our people. Recent achievements of commissioning of large projects like GAIL pipeline, international seaports and airports are evidences of the fast, efficient and transparent land acquisition practices of state government, which maintains zero tolerance towards corruption. I hope we all keep in mind these basic features of governance that Kerala follows up in fixing its developmental priorities. When we look forward to plans that can transform our society, I am sure that the scholarly discourse of in this consultation which put forward glorious ideas that can lead to beneficial change in the development chart of Kerala. I take this opportunity to welcome all dignitaries, experts and participants of this international conference to Kerala. I may congratulate the efforts of the State Planning Board for organizing this event so well. I welcome all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those words of hope and vision. We are honored to welcome our special guest, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chief Scientist, World Health Organization, and Professor Joseph E. Stiglitz, winner of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences and University Professor, Columbia University. First, to address this gathering, I'd like to request Dr. Swaminathan.
Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala, Shri Pinarayi Vijayan, and respected dignitaries. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak at the Kerala Looks Ahead conference. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to join you today and share a few thoughts with you. Kerala is well known for its excellence in both development as well as in attaining the highest health indicators. And it's been a model that's been studied over many years to show how in a developing country, in a middle income country, one can actually achieve health outcomes which are comparable to some of the highest income countries in the world. We have recently seen the NFHS 5 data that looks at different health parameters as well as some social indicators and determinants of health. And we clearly see that progress is being made in areas like infant and maternal mortality, which were already very low in Kerala, as well as in the almost universal literacy in sanitation, clean drinking water, access to education, as well as access to institutional deliveries and care for ordinary diseases like diarrhea and respiratory infections. So today I don't want to focus so much on all the impressive achievements, of which there are many and one could speak for a long time about that, but rather focus on a few challenges and areas, because this is a conference where we're looking ahead and we're going to always be striving to do better and to look for gaps that might need to be filled. So I would like to start basically by focusing on public health, because like never before, I think the COVID pandemic has taught us the importance of investing in public health. And this includes everything from having a robust surveillance system which is based on digital and not analog data collection, on having the right kind of human resources, trained epidemiologists are available in every district who can investigate outbreaks immediately, having laboratories that can do diagnostics. And nowadays we see that sequencing has become an integral part of what we call genetic epidemiology, of having supply chains and logistics and communication networks, and very importantly, having the contact and communication with communities, which I think Kerala has been very good at. Now, Kerala has done well in terms of healthcare in general and providing clinical care and taking care of people's needs, investing in the system, in the primary healthcare system, so that we have seen that there's been a reduction in out-of-pocket expenditure and an increasingly people turning to the public health system, which is very good. We need to now go beyond the clinical and really look at these other aspects of public health, which include prevention, disease prevention, and health promotion, and attention to risk factors and determinants of disease which are outside the health sector. And I'm talking about things like air pollution, nutrition, balanced diets and dietary diversity, tobacco and alcohol, road safety to reduce the number of fatalities due to traffic accidents, as well as attention to mental health. And I think this is where we need to look at the data very carefully, because from what I saw of the NFHS 5 data, we see an increase in overweight and obesity, both in adults as well as in children, worryingly. And we see that almost a quarter of the adult population suffers from diabetes and about 20% from hypertension. Now, these chronic diseases are the ones that actually give rise to cardiovascular disease, stroke, cerebrovascular disease, as well as many of them increase the risk for cancer as well. And because the lifespan is going to continue to increase, we're going to be faced with an increasing burden. So while we need to certainly focus on treatment of those who already have these conditions, because early detection and treatment definitely improves the quality of life and prevents complications, we also need to look more upstream at the factors that are actually causing an increase in obesity, in diabetes, and try to address those. So this is where the multi-sectoral and intersectoral linkages come in, with agriculture, with food, with sectors like road transport, with the planning of cities and and things like that. So in terms of improving on clinical care, we've seen again during the pandemic the accelerated uptake of digital tools and technologies. So telemedicine is something that can be used much more widely because these technologies exist. We have a shortage of specialists, and in order to reach more people with specialist care, the use of telemedicine is a very good option. I've also seen in some hospitals recently, including in the Arvind Hospital, Eye Hospital in Pondicherry, the use of something called shared care, where again, if you have a group of people suffering from a similar disease, you could have them connected to a specialist who provides group counseling and group therapy and group advice, so that everybody is learning from each other and asking questions. This has to be tested on a wider way using tele facilities. What has been done so far is in-person shared care, but we could also look at virtual shared care and also use all of these applications that were developed for COVID contact tracing and tracking, to use them for things like chronic diseases, to track tuberculosis patients, to track people with hypertension, to ensure that they are well and that they are taking their treatment. So I think digital tools are going to see a lot of, they have a lot of scope, and we can expand their use. On surveillance as well, we need to use digital tools. I mean, the WHO uses something called the Epidemic Intelligence System, which actually collects data from different sources, including media reports. So millions of data sources are picked up and then analyzed using artificial intelligence in order to pick up those which might be of concern and need further investigation. Similarly, I mentioned genomic surveillance. We need to build in the capacity to do whole genome sequencing. The infrastructure, the hardware is getting cheaper and more affordable, as well as even portable now. But what we need is training of those bioinformatics specialists who can look at and analyze the sequence data. And this has been done for COVID, and it's given us, in fact, that's the reason why today we know about these new variants which are being identified in the UK, in South Africa and Brazil, which are really causing concern at this point, because if the virus is able to mutate in a way that it's able to bypass the immune system, the antibodies that people who are infected or people who are vaccinated generate, then it's a very serious situation indeed. So it's really important to keep track of this. The next point I'd like to make is on institutional capacity strengthening, and particularly in some areas like the evidence to policy translation. We need to build the institutional capacity which already exists in places like the Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute, but we need more of that capacity to do health technology assessment, to do prioritization, to do cost effectiveness analyses, to be constantly analyzing data, which is then used to inform policy. And we've seen again in COVID that countries and states that have used data, real-time data, to inform policies and have been able to strategically shift their focus areas and change their policies based on what they're seeing on the ground, have actually done much better than others who had fixed ideas and were not willing to change. The sector of manufacturing of medical devices, diagnostics, the huge area where innovation can contribute a lot to affordable healthcare, is something that needs to be further strengthened, investments made so that it will definitely have many returns. We've seen in the last year that India has done well on innovation, and in many areas where we were previously importing products, it's possible to manufacture it in India itself. On traditional medicine, again, Kerala is, because of the system of Ayurveda, it has had a very long history and a tradition of both the practice of traditional medicine, the belief that people have in traditional medicine, and documentation. And so what Kerala could do is really to leverage the strengths and the capacity that exist in order to both improve the practice of traditional medicine in primary health care, document it, but also to do systematic research, including randomized clinical trials, to show where Ayurveda adds value, and particularly in diseases where allopathy does not have a curative solution. And finally, I think learning from experiences and improving is always a good idea. And I've seen many countries that have done intra-action reviews. The WHO has guidance on how to do this. And I'm thinking about COVID and learning from the successes, the challenges, the mistakes that were made, and how things can be done better in the future, because certainly this is not going to be the last pandemic that we see. We know that pandemics are going to most likely arise from animals, that they're going to be viruses that transmit from an animal species to the human beings and then learn how to transmit between human beings. They evolve to make themselves more efficient at transmission. And Kerala has had an experience with Nipah, which was handled excellently, and which was actually the outbreak was contained and controlled with minimal impact and loss to lives. The COVID pandemic, however, has overtaken, I think, the capacity of the best health systems in the world. And therefore, this is a good time to actually review what has happened and to identify where policies could be improved, as well as where there are gaps, both in human resources and institutional capacity, or in areas. So setting up a foresight unit, which might already exist, but specifically looking at health issues, and looking not just forecasting for future disease outbreaks or epidemics, though that would be an important element, forecasting natural disasters, but also foresight on what the health challenges are likely to be 10 years, 20 years from now, and what needs to be done today to prevent things from going out of hand at that time, and what investments need to be made today. It would be a very useful function. It also allows us to look ahead to see what technologies there could be in the future that are going to make a big impact on the way we do things today. And clearly, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms are one that are going to have a big impact on health, but also there are going to be many advances. There already are many advances in genetic technologies which can be used not only for surveillance but also for treatment. We're looking at, in the next few years, curative treatments becoming available for diseases like sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, and so on, using CRISPR-Cas technology. So the CRISPR technology has made it much simpler now, even though it's still expensive. It's still not, we haven't come to the situation where it can be widely deployed, but this will happen. And planning for that and investing in the capacity that's going to be needed in order to bring gene therapy to people would be important. So finally, as I close, I would like to think that we have three basic principles in our mind as we plan the health systems for the future. Equity. I think we should not forget that even within well-developed states like Kerala, there are pockets of underdevelopment, pockets of poverty, and pockets where there are highly vulnerable people that whose health outcomes are far worse than the rest of the population. The second is sustainability. Anything we do would need to be sustainable. And the third is resilience in the face of health shocks that come from time to time. And with those words, I would like to again thank you very much for this opportunity, and greetings, and I wish everyone well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for neatly laying out a brilliant set of focus points for Kerala. I now request Nobel laureate Professor Stiglitz to address this inaugural session.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to address you, and I want to thank the Chief Minister and all the other participants in this conference. And I want to echo the words of the Chief Scientist of the importance of this conference of Kerala looks ahead, looking ahead, learning from the lessons of this terrible COVID-19, which is going to change the global economy and going to necessitate a change in economic frameworks of countries around the world. So before I come to that, I want to also join in what's already been mentioned, celebrating Kerala's achievements, particularly in health and education. One of the reasons I was enthusiastic of joining you in this meeting is that, like others who studied development in different countries, Kerala stands out as one of the places where there have been real achievements in these very important areas of sustainable development. There are many other aspects of Kerala's development, of Kerala's governance that I want to emphasize, and I'll come back to them in terms of the response to the COVID-19. Competent governmental institutions. That was emphasized by the chief scientist. Competence in administration is a necessary condition for a successful development. I believe part of that is consultation of the kind that you are engaged in here. Kerala is also well known for its participatory democracy, it's decentralization. A third aspect that's very important and very related to its successes in education is the importance of science, the reliance on science. And finally, I want to mention something where Kerala has gone a different course than many other countries, and a different course than the rest of India, where it has continued to give importance to planning. Now, of course, planning isn't the same as it was 70 years ago when there was an idea that a central planner could write down everything that had to be done in a complex society. But there is still need for planning, for thinking ahead, for, as this conference says, Kerala looks ahead, for thinking about what are the sectors that ought to be expanding, what are the needs of society. Markets don't do that very well. Markets are short-sighted. In fact, even in an advanced country like the United States, we discovered over and over again how short-sighted markets are. In 2008, in the run-up to the financial crisis, which had a devastating effect around the world, we saw how short-sighted our financial markets were. But in the context of COVID-19, we've also seen how short-sighted our manufacturing has been. Americans, people all over the world were shocked that the United States could not produce even simple products like masks or protective gear, let alone more complicated products like ventilators or tests. We had lost our productive capacities. We were short-sighted. We built cars without spare tires. We didn't contemplate adequately the risks ahead. And that's often the case for markets. And so that's why there needs to be leadership from the government, working with the private sector, working with civil society, the business community, to try to think together about the direction of where the economy, where the society is going. And I'm going to make some remarks about the views, the lessons, the implications of COVID-19 in just a few minutes. COVID-19 has been a kind of natural experiment. It's affected countries all over the world. We don't fully understand the randomness of it, why it has affected some countries so much more than others. At the beginning, we thought that poor countries with poor health like Africa would be disproportionately affected. It has affected South Africa terribly, but there are other places that have not been affected. Still, as we look across similar countries, we see very different outcomes. We see places like New Zealand, Taiwan, Vietnam, South Korea that have managed to basically contain the disease. And they haven't done it in an authoritarian way as it's been done in some other countries. They've done it in a very democratic way. They've done it by engaging their citizens. They've done it by reliance on science. They've done it by government leadership. They've done it by promoting trust between citizens and their governments and citizens and each other. They've, for instance, gotten across a very simple idea that when you don't wear a mask, you impose an externality on others. You impose risks, costs on others, a risk of others dying. And it's respect for others that leads one to want to wear masks. There's some other things that have come out of, lessons that have come out of COVID-19. Two of those lessons concern globalization. One of those is cooperation is important. Just as cooperation is necessary for dealing with climate change, it's a global problem. By definition, a pandemic is a global problem. It's a disease, an epidemic affecting the entire world, in which the WHO has done a fantastic job in showing leadership. So we need cooperation. The scientific community has cooperated in a way as never before. Put aside personal rivalries, the normal concerns about who is first, and they've worked together all over the world to rapidly produce vaccines, therapeutics, tests. Unfortunately, some governments and some companies have not cooperated. In some places, we've seen vaccine nativism, healthcare nativism. Ironically, even the United States, which imports far more medicines than it exports, there was, on the part of President Trump, an attempt at nativism early on. And pointed out, if other countries reciprocated, we would be in much worse shape. So cooperation is absolutely essential. But also what we've learned from COVID-19 is that borders matter. That the basic unit, even today, is the nation state, and quite often, it's the subnational state. In the United States, the federal government was totally incompetent. And the response to COVID-19 had to rely on the subunits, on the states, on our cities. New York City, New York State have done a much better job than the federal government, which abdicated its responsibility. So India, where the states still have considerable sway, what Kerala does is very important. And that's why the kind of initiative that you're undertaking today is so important. We've seen how just being a wealthy country isn't enough. Of course, being a poor country puts one in a disadvantageous position. In the United States, as in some other countries around the world, there was at that moment an incompetent and authoritarian leader with authoritarian tendencies, who did not trust in science, who did not build trust within his people, who abdicated the responsibility of government. And that is why in the United States, so many people have gotten the disease and so many people have died. Well over 400,000. And no matter how strong the reaction at this point of our new president, President Biden, it can't undo the damage of having a year of President Trump at the helm has done to our country and to our world. When the crisis started, we all turned to government, as we do whenever there's a crisis. But 40 years of denigrating the role of government under neoliberal ideology had left government in a position that it could not respond. The Trump administration, for instance, defunded the central agency responsible for responding to a pandemic, the Centers for Disease Control, which had been one of the leading agencies of its kind around the world and had taught other countries how to respond to this kind of infectious disease. But unfortunately, he defunded that. As the chief scientist just pointed out, viruses are going to arise and jump from animals to humans. And the irony was that he defunded that particular part of the CDC particularly. In the United States, under President Obama, we had become aware of the dangers of a pandemic. We had been warned. We had been warned by SARS, by MERS, by Ebola. And under Obama, there was created a White House Office of Response to Pandemic. That was the importance that was given to the threat of a pandemic. But then under President Trump, that kind of, that office was disbanded. So having governments that don't understand the important role of government is dangerous and leaves a society vulnerable. We've seen that in the United States. And unfortunately, other countries, such as yours, have experienced a similar kind of incompetence at the central level. And that's why it's so important for the state of Kerala to take strong actions. Now, the one thing that was good about the response in the United States was because of the initiative taken by particularly the Democrats in our Congress, recognizing that there was going to be a dramatic downturn. They passed a strong stimulus action. And the central bank responded in like measure. So the federal government spent over $3 trillion, and the central bank expanded its balance sheet by $3 trillion. Result, not a very well-designed program. It was a bazooka, but it actually worked reasonably well. It left out some of the vulnerable. It wasn't sustained. But when we look at the contrast between what has happened in the United States to our economy, not to our health, but to our economy, and what has happened in the EU, we see the role of a strong government response. The magnitude of the economic downturn in Europe is twice that of the United States, even though the disease has afflicted them somewhat less. And the reason is that we had a strong stimulus response on the part of the federal government that has sustained the economy. Well, given what I've just said about what makes for a successful response to the health crisis, Kerala was actually well prepared. As I said, it had a competent government, a competent administration, a kind of trust, a reliance on science, a strong education, a strong healthcare system. This disease is not an equal opportunity virus. It goes after people in poor health. And that's why one of the reasons it's had such an adverse effect in the United States is that we have so many people without adequate health care and without adequate income. But what this COVID-19 has also exposed is that education, having a strong education and health system is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Kerala has relied, I believe, to too large extent on remittances as a source of income. And it's particularly relied to too large extent on remittances from the Gulf states. The irony is that in that way, Kerala has become indirectly dependent on oil, on our carbon economy. You don't think of yourself as a part of the fossil fuel economy, but indirectly you are. And that's why it's very important for Kerala to be looking ahead. Part of looking ahead is recognizing by 2050, the world will be largely based on renewable energy. And that means the Gulf states that are so dependent on oil and gas, on fossil fuel, will not have the kind of position they have today unless they restructure their economies far faster than they've done in the last 30 years. That suggests that combined with the point that I made before about borders mattering, means that it is imperative for Kerala to think ahead about a strategy that creates more jobs in the state itself. It can't be dependent on remittance. It has to generate its own productive capacities. So, and it can't rely on the central government in New Delhi, which has shown itself in so many ways to be economically incompetent. For instance, in the demonetization initiative, which affected so adversely so many parts of India itself. So Kerala, the state of Kerala, has to go its own way to the extent that it can, but it has to strengthen its productive capacities. Unfortunately, another lesson of COVID-19 is that one cannot be reliant in that development strategy on debt. The countries around the world that relied on debt are now facing difficult times. There are debt crises in country after country. So Kerala will have to rely to a great extent on its own resources. As one thinks about what are some of the areas, what are the economic strategies going forward, let me mention just a few. In this short time, I can't lay out a full agenda. But there are two principles I want to mention. The first is the importance of diversification, that Kerala was too dependent on one source of income, remittances. Important to have a diversified economy, including manufacturing, agriculture. Tourism, I think, will rebound. And when it rebounds, that will help Kerala. I've had the pleasure of enjoying tourism in Kerala, and I'll be back visiting you again once the COVID-19 is under control. The second thing is one has to take advantage of your skills, the skills that what you've already developed, but recognizing the changes in the global economy and the opportunities and the challenges that they posed. So, for instance, you have a great advantage in education, but there are going to be very large changes in the skill requirements necessary as one looks ahead. One of the concerns that I have is that artificial intelligence will decrease the returns to routine jobs, to jobs that require only limited amounts of skill. One will have to go to higher levels of training, higher levels of skill. Health is another area in which Kerala stands out. The Chief Minister and others have already talked about some of the opportunities that affords through telemedicine, one can deliver both education services and health services at a distance. Another area where there are potentials in combining new with the old is manufacturing of technology related to the provision of telemedicine, of healthcare. Some parts of India have been very successful in generic medicines, in developing generic pharmaceuticals. These are areas where there's a natural comparative advantage to Kerala. So in conclusion, let me just say thank you once again for inviting me. That to reiterate, there are many lessons that have emerged from this terrible scourge, COVID-19, that Kerala has enormous advantages as it looks ahead, but it has to, at this juncture, look at its current strengths, recognize that the world going forward is going to be in many ways markedly different, and take advantage of its strengths and respond to these new challenges posed by the changes in the global economy that will be inevitable in the coming decades, both because of COVID-19, because of climate change, and because of the changing geopolitical scene.
Thank you, sir. What a candid address there, peppered with examples from across the world. Thank you for your presence and your ideas for Kerala. I now invite Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, the Chief Minister of Kerala, to deliver the inaugural address and officially launch this international conference and consultation.
Distinguished speakers, Dr. Joseph Stiglitz, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Vice Chairperson of the State Planning Board, Professor Ramayendran, Ministers, Chief Secretary, members of Kerala State Planning Board, distinguished scholars, experts, delegates, officers, and friends. I welcome you all. The Government of Kerala and the State Planning Board have organized this 3-day conference, Kerala Looks Ahead, in order to learn from the world. Kerala has been and remains the most important example in independent India of the power of public action to improve the well-being of the people. The first priority of this government, which took office in May 2016, was to consolidate and deepen the gains the state has made in human development. We believe that today, Kerala is set for a great transformation, one that builds on its historic achievements in land reform, education, health, social justice, and decentralized government. We can and must emerge successful in our attempt to find productive employment for our educated and highly skilled citizens. We will be successful in creating a progressive, modern economy, one that serves every one of its citizens. In the context of the pandemic and its consequences too, we need to think collectively on how to move forward, observing best of ideas and practices from different parts of India and the world. We look forward to ideas from all of you that will help transform Kerala into a true knowledge economy founded on new technologies and innovation. This conference will discuss ways to give a big thrust to the development and management of our agricultural, animal, and fishery resources. In the industrial sector, you will discuss the areas on which the state should concentrate attention, given its abundant natural resources, but also its inherent constraints of land and population. How do we upgrade our centers of higher education to new standards of excellence? How do we learn from international experience to provide high quality services to citizens and to make government transparent, efficient, and responsive? How do we make Kerala the skilled labor hub of India? I am confident that the experts gathered here will find answers to these and many other questions. As the state prepares to draw up the 14th five-year plan and a new government will start its term, the time is ripe for new initiatives and schemes. The insights drawn from the discussions at this conference will be very valuable in the formulation of new projects and for revising existing schemes. I am sure that the trajectory of key sectors of the economy will be influenced by the suggestions and inputs drawn from the deliberations over the next 2 days. On behalf of the Government of Kerala, I would like to thank all the distinguished personalities who have agreed to participate in this conference. Special thanks to Nobel laureates Professor Amartya Sen and Dr. Joseph Stiglitz, to Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chief Scientist of the World Health Organization, leaders of Indian industry, Sri Ratan Tata, Sri Kumar Mangalam Birla, Sri Asim Premji, Sri Anand Mahindra, Srimati Kiran Mazumdar Shah, Sri Chris Gopalakrishnan, Sri M.A. Yusuf Ali, Sri Ravi Pillai, Sri S.D. Shibulal, Sri Asad Moopen, and all the representatives of national and international organizations, including the WHO, ILO, ICAR, and academic and professional organizations in different parts of the world, for kindly consenting to attend various sessions of this conclave. I congratulate the Kerala State Planning Board for the efforts they have made to identify the areas which the state needs to focus in the coming days and for bringing together this extraordinary assemblage of renowned academics, industry leaders, planners, and administrators on this platform. As I mentioned earlier, we are here to learn from you. I am sure that this conclave will throw much needed light on areas where we need to focus our collective attention and investments. With these words, I have great pleasure in inaugurating this conference. I wish its proceedings all success. Thank you.
On behalf of everyone watching this conference, thank you, Chief Minister, for officially launching this international conference and consultation. I now call upon Dr. Venu V. IAS, Member Secretary, Kerala State Planning Board, to present the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege on behalf of the State Planning Board to offer a vote of thanks to the dignitaries who have attended this inaugural session. Let me start by thanking our Honorable Chief Minister. The Chief Minister, with his vision and leadership, has given us the right guidance while we were going about the task of designing the conference. Many of these, programs, the themes were identified by the Chief Minister personally. He is the captain of our ship as our state charts new waters. Sir, on behalf of the State Planning Board, thank you very much for your kind words and for inaugurating this conference. Our heartfelt thanks to Professor Stiglitz. His words were stimulating and thought-provoking, and has truly set the stage for the deliberations of tomorrow when we have sessions across the day on 8-9 different themes. I think Professor Stiglitz has given us plenty of pointers to the future and for the responsibilities of the state as an enlightened controller and facilitator of development in Kerala. Our thanks to Dr. Soumya Swaminathan for her insights and perspectives particularly on the future aspects of public health, much of which will come into play in the state of Kerala as we confront the challenges, the new challenges in the health sector. On behalf of the state government, may I also extend an invitation to Professor Stiglitz and Dr. Soumya Swaminathan to visit us. Professor Stiglitz, you are most welcome to come again to Kerala. Please do so at the earliest convenience as the guests of Government of Kerala. On behalf of the State Planning Board, may I thank the Honorable Ministers, Sri E. Chandrasekharan, Sri K. Krishnankuti, Sri A. K. Shashindran, and Sri Ramachandran Kadannapalli for their august presence and for their good wishes for the conference. Our heartfelt thanks to the Chief Secretary, Dr. Vishwas Mehta, for his inspiring words. He has also always been the guiding light for us officers and has led by example. I would be failing in my duty if I didn't thank the main architect of this conference, Dr. V.K. Ramachandran, Vice Chairperson of the State Planning Board, for leading the team from the front, for his attention to detail, and for his perseverance. He is really the real architect of all that will happen in the next 2 days. My thanks also to all the other members of the State Planning Board, each of whom have worked assiduously and taken a lot of effort to identify the right people and to invite them on behalf of the board. Tomorrow's the delegates and the speakers are a result of their combined efforts. I'm also thankful to all my colleagues in the State Planning Board, all of whom have worked tirelessly. Particular mention should be made of Ms. Gayatri, Dr. Harshan, and all the team members in the Vice Chairperson Secretariat who have been working on this for many weeks. My thanks to all government officials who have cooperated with the Planning Board, for members and representatives of the media, all attendees and participants. I would close by saying thanks to all the people who are observing this, who are watching us on our website, on YouTube, and on other media. Please join us for further discussions tomorrow and the day after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And that brings us to the end of the inaugural session. Thank you all once again for connecting in, and we welcome you to a remarkable program of technical sessions and special sessions in the days ahead. Thank you.